So if you like follow some of the quotes I'd like to share from this study, Angela Hwang went into a little bit of detail, but let me give you a little bit of the background and how we're going to go through.
Can you adjust the mic?
Sure. How's this now? Oh, it's not working. Wait.
Oh, now it should work. I see what happened. And then, yeah, this one's off. Thank you for that. Yeah. We're going to talk a lot about voice as part of the study, but just to give a little bit of background, I would be remiss if I didn't just share a little bit of the methodology. I'm speaking with a very distinguished group here. You all will be wondering, how did she put this together? What is exactly measured? So I like doing this in the beginning so folks know what they're looking at, what they're learning about. So it's a qualitative study. And what that means is we're able to go really in depth into cultural undertones of what our interviewees are sharing. But it's not a national study. It's not representative of everyone's experience. Nonetheless, because of the depth the participants were able to provide, we're able to share a lot of the color and a lot of the subliminal messaging that exists in our everyday conversations. So we interviewed 21 Asian American women leaders, mostly C-suite and executive level, at the beginning of the year, and each interview was about 30 minutes of a conversation. So there's a lot of stories that were shared with us. Everybody received the same questions. So that's how we're able to ladder up the results and make call-outs. Angela Hwang mentioned this. One of the key findings from the study was that these women fundamentally led with data. Hard work was essential, they led with data. That was very, very firm in their responses. But then when we dug a little bit deeper, we were asking them what are the top 2-3 things that they made their decisions by. There was this mindfulness of the communities that they served, that they felt responsible for. I'm seeing nods in the listeners here because that's just how you operate. It's with a mind towards the community that you're serving. This, I thought, was the crux of the Asian American women leaders' experience. They were taking these cultural traits that they were given, that they saw as opportunities, as part of their own fabric, their own upbringing, and they were able to turn them into corporate opportunities. But there was a transition that they were very aware of, that they had to go through to make what they were taught work in a corporate American setting, and we'll go into detail about that. There was much advice, just one second, if we can go back. There was much advice that was shared about how to get there. How do you go from mid-level to the high level? And how do you stay at the high level? And the big call out was network, 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 network. This was something that was dominant in every conversation, as well as the need to be vocal. This is something that voice, how to use voice, was something that the participants indicated that many of us struggle with. How do you be authentic all the while being vocal? Not necessarily loud, but saying what you need to say to talk about your accomplishments. That was something that they had to work through and had figured out. And they have very nice ways of giving advice. We'll see in detail in a bit. Last but not least, risk-taking. They go where others don't go because they take from their upbringing some coping mechanisms that they had developed as children, perhaps being the only Asian American family in town, perhaps being the only Asian American woman at the table. They take that learning and they go after the job that feels odd to everybody else, but they see the opportunity, and that's how they excel and show their prowess. So let's proceed. Now we're going to go into some details about each one. I think the quotes will make the study come to life. There are fundamental threads, commonalities among these women, and I think it's distinct. It's an homage to the culture, it's an homage to who they have served, is who they have become as leaders. First and foremost, they're grounded leaders. And what do we mean by that? Let's go one more. This is the part about authenticity and integrity. These are soft values. Again, they're leading with data, and they're very aware of the corporate goal. They're serving their organization, no doubt about that. But the underlying tone and the check marks they have in place are about integrity, authenticity, respect to the communities that they serve. One of the quotes I would like to share here, this is from an HR leader, and we spoke with women from a variety of industries. She goes, I think that's what drives my leadership in corporate America. It's the fabric that I have that isn't about me. I can't be selfish. I have to think about the others first. Think how different that is from perhaps another type of leader who serves themselves first, is about, all about going up the ladder, but this is someone who does the best they can and also thinks of the community that they serve. Let's go one more. This balance of being respectfully vocal. A lot of the women I spoke with, whether they were of Chinese or Indian or Singaporean background, there was a variety of subcultures that were represented in the community that I interviewed. There was this friction, if you will, of how do you raise your voice all the while remaining authentic to yourself. If you are, and I'm, by the way, of Turkish background, so I understand about Asiatic cultures, I understand about being taught that if you're actually quiet, you're wiser. Being taught, you have to be respectful of your elders. You have to first listen to what they have to say. And when you're in a corporate American setting, if you remain quiet at all times and do not talk about your accomplishments, it works against you. And they had figured this out early on and had made a conscientious decision to pivot and say, I'm going to not be loud necessarily, but vocal. I'm going to talk about my accomplishments, and I'm going to make an appointment with someone who needs to hear about my accomplishments. So let's go one more. This is an example. One of the financial services leaders I had the pleasure of speaking with. One thing I'll say that runs very deep, even at this, is having respect for everyone at every level. So that checks with their authentic self. That's how they feel comfortable speaking up. Am I being respectful? I maintain respect, but I do talk about my experience. I think that just carries through with me always. I also try to be as simple and as direct as possible without trying to confuse people, so people can understand what I'm saying. And I think that comes from being a child of an immigrant. This is someone who grew up seeing parents who perhaps spoke multiple languages and have to be careful about the way and directed about the way that they communicated. Look at the way she transposes that to the number one way she communicates in a corporate setting, crisp and clear. And she wins with that. Let's go one more. They're masters of cultural fusion, and here's what I mean by that. Let's go one more. Here's some examples, but it's holding on to who they are, not losing sight of that, not necessarily calling that out in a meeting place, but turning the cultural barrier into advantages. One of the most interesting quotes came from, again, a financial services leader who said, well, in my world, things go up and down. You are supposed to trade when the stock value is higher, and you're supposed to buy when the stock value is low, but I did things differently. And that is not an alien thing to me. Because she was used to going against the grain, she was used to being different. A board member who sits on the boards of several companies, who has had a lot of experience as a consultant in her career, also shared that culturally it's really about overcoming some of that and saying now that you're in the workplace and you are on equal footing. This is someone who has many accolades, who had to go through that adjustment in her head and then proceed and say, well, in this workplace, we're equal. So my opinion matters. I think there is a good parts of it, which is the need to collaborate and making sure people are coming together. But look how she transposes that to consensus seeking and being, again, group oriented. So it's not that she's just proceeding for herself. She's sharing, she's being vocal, but she's also being mindful of the group. And that's a communal cultural trait that is actually coming into the American corporate place, which is an individualistic setting. But she's using it to her advantage. Now she's a consensus builder, and she's a leader. Let's go one more. They're driven networkers. Network. That was one of the key pieces of advice that they gave to their peers, and they also gave to the upcoming younger generation. And networking was nuanced, because it's not so easy to find other Asian American women leaders who are just like you or having a very similar experience to you. Let's see how they did it. Let's go one more. Everybody had mentors, and these were deep relationships, typically not from Asian American background. I think that's reflective of the corporate American workplace. You're likely to run into people with different experiences, and that's a plus. That's okay, because you want people who understand you, but who also can share stories of their own background, saying this is how it works here, this is how it worked for me, and that's richness. They had multiple mentors along the way, and they maintained relationships with these people, even outside the workplace, even when that job was done. What I consistently heard was, yes, you need mentors, but what you really need is a sponsor. I'm gonna look around and say, how many of you can guess, I'm using what a sponsor is? Someone who will stand up for you, who will speak positively about you when you're not in the room. Their success is vested in your success. So they'll make sure you go ahead, it's part of the corporate American game, you go ahead, you move ahead, and they will defend you when need be. They will honor you when need be. You will be top of mind, top on the agenda, even when you're not in the room. That was quintessential in all of their experiences, even though they came from quite different experiences. Let's go one more. And they pay homage still to their mentors, indicating the need to tap into different types of wisdom. And that's what I meant, that it's actually okay if the mentor is not someone who is identically the same kind of family or upbringing as you are. It actually brings richness. And the one other call out was that you have to network to find these people, and you have to network in your company, outside your company. In your field, outside your field. And that's exactly the varied network that these women had and relied on when they needed to pivot in their career or when they needed a little bit of advice as to how to move forward. Let's go one more. It's not so easy to find a sponsor. It's a little awkward also to go ask someone, can you be my sponsor? You can't put it exactly in those words. I don't think any of them did. But what they did was a conscientious effort to go in and present their results, to meet with someone on the side, and to share their accomplishments, even if maybe one-on-one, maybe not in a group setting. They were also very well aware of the systemic inequities in accessing sponsorship opportunities. I've had a lot of mentors. I have a lot of good sponsors, not a whole lot of them are Asian, to be frank with you, because, well, there's not that many of us. So it's really uncomfortable. It's a little awkward, but you have to get out of that zone and really edge out to different communities. That's what it takes. Let's go one more. Inclusive corporate cultures elevate. Let's go one more because there's a typo there. I don't want to say that. Lack of inclusion and systematic biases hamper career growth. They were very, very aware of this because they were the different ones at the table, and they understood that their ideas were actually bringing richness to the discussion. And there was a difference in the way they had been included in the beginning of their careers versus later stages of the careers. In the beginning, it's more difficult. You're younger, you're less experienced, you're not necessarily invited to every meeting. Later, when you're in a management role, you're able to bring in other people, and you're able to have the agency to choose people of different experiences and backgrounds as part of that richness that you need for innovation to the table. That's what they talked about. It's not such a straight path, and it's not that easy. But at the end of it all, they all hung their hat on inclusion as a core business value that was essential to develop the product, to be innovative, to be cutting edge, and to rise all boats. Let's go one more. And the conversation, of course, came around to the role of ERGs and DEI as we speak about it today. There was an understanding that DEI was, in principle, a good thing, as a necessary structure. It can work if done right, was something that I heard from multiple people who were unaware of what others were sharing. And there was this healthy debate around whether the way it was implemented was actually benefiting the community or not. Not everybody agreed if the way it was implemented so far had actually benefited the community, because some led to perceptions not the truth, perceptions of tokenism, perceptions of people getting ahead because of their ethnic background and not necessarily because of merit. But almost everyone said, if DEI goes away the way we know it, we're gonna lose footing. So there's a need to do it right. There's a need for organizational commitment and structure, and to focus on giving people equitable access, equal chance. One leader I spoke with, financial in fintech industry, she mentioned that she had been the awareness of creating a diverse set of companies in the VC community that she's part of made her company come into a portfolio. She's a top performer in that portfolio. Would she have been chosen if it weren't for that awareness, that structured push, if you will, to include people of different backgrounds in that portfolio? She wasn't so sure. So it does work, there is a purpose for it, and then the rest is performance. But you do need to give people that access and be mindful of the need to be equitable. So superficial programs, counterproductive. There is a systematic bias, but the way to move forward is to make sure that it's structured and it's done right with commitment from the top level. People from a lot of different industries expressed this need and then pivoted on the idea of diversity, not just based on ethnicity, but more rather a diversity of thought. There was a leader who was in charge in her company of global innovation and technology. And she makes sure that there are people of different experiences at the table so that she can get the best thinking. She said, if you constantly talk to the same type of person, you're going to get one mode of answer. So to innovate, she invites different people, and who may happen to be from different types of ethnic backgrounds, but it was a business purpose behind it. Let's go one more. I'll land on this, and then I'll turn it over to our panel. The big takeaway was that the leaders that we spoke with have to overcome both gender and cultural biases in their journey. Double whammy was something that I heard a lot when they're the only female at the table, and also Asian American. There are certain biases, cultural biases, that they may have to overcome, but they do succeed, definitely, to navigate corporate America while maintaining their positive cultural traits. So it's taking that coping mechanism or that positive trait and turning it, translating it into something that works in the workplace in the way America knows, building consensus to get your ideas sold in, to move up the ladder, to collaborate. All of these are necessary skills in corporate America. And then leveraging the support systems that they have to move beyond traditional expectations and carving out a place for themselves. That was a piece of advice that was their experience, and that's the advice that they imparted with the next generation, that you have to feel perhaps a little uncomfortable, but then you have to show your craft and not be afraid to do so. Thank you very much for your attention. You mentioned there's a white paper on this study. Feel free to grab a copy on the way out. And thank you for sharing your experiences with me. They were incredibly powerful and valuable.